Hey, hello everyone. How you doing? Wow, what a day. You have to admit this has been just a wild day in so many different ways that well, for me, I think the most immediate uh, news that is just amazing, and I'm going to show you the latest video, is what our son is doing. I've made a number of videos that was not my intent, but they are necessary, and this is something we have to pay attention to. We haven't gone through uh, what's about to hit us, and what I'm about to show you, you're going to understand what I'm talking about. And let me just say this. There are many in science, meteorology, astronomy, that, for instance, most weather people that go to school and get into meteorology still don't understand the relationship between weather and the sun. I know, I had a conversation today, and I was quite surprised that the individual didn't understand when I said, well, you know, there was a solar flare, 9.3 X-ray class. I was like, well, yeah, okay. I said, you don't see any correlation between what's happened on our sun with a solar flare and weather? He says, I don't see any relationship to that at all. And I said, okay, well, that's cool. Have a good day. I'm shocked by that, but you know, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. What I thought many in meteorology would begin to understand, there's a direct correlation between the sun and weather. But apparently that's still being debated, which I'm surprised. So how bad is this solar flare? I found some video right off Heliosphere, brought in the latest, and think it's about an hour old. So let's check this out. Okay, so as you can see, this is YouTube. You can actually go to the Heliosphere. They actually have a channel. So this is 304 angstroms. And let's watch this. Well, let's maybe not. Okay, here we go. So you're going to see, now, this is the one that started erupting. Now, I'm going to stop this when it gets to this next flare. Look at that right there. Now, that's the one, that's the X class. That's the 9.3. But wait till you see what is coming behind this one. So you can see the time code. This is today at 9:15:17 UTPC, I think, Universal Time. Watch. These are long duration events. Watch the time code at the bottom. It's still flaring. Okay. Now it eases back down. Watch this. Wait till you see the hit right there. Okay, I'm going to get my excited voice. Are you freaking kidding me? Look at that. Now, this was 1200 Universal Time. Look at that. 12:01:29. Boy, those numbers have significance. Watch this, folks. Look at this. This is still happening. We're in between the X-ray class, but you can see, watch this here at the end. It looks like it's going to erupt yet one more time. Now you can just see this is so active. You can see it yourself. There was another release. And then that ends it right there at 1754. This looks like this is not over. You can just see clear magnetic interaction. Now, so what do we have to look forward to as far as the mixing? Give me 1 second and I'll show you. All right, so I've gone ahead and pulled this up off of the SDO. This actually shows us the mixing that's going on. And, you know, you still got this beta, delta, gamma mixing right here. And as long as this is intense like this, it's going to have flaring possibility. But now what I find really interesting is this large spread out group that has been very spread out polarity. This is starting to build right here. You can see it. Now, if this one starts building a negative polarity pole right here, that could be something. But watch what's going on over here. We now have a new group spread out polarity-wise here. But I just looked at what's coming around the limb on the eastern side, and you can't see it now in the visible here, but there are yet more sunspots coming around. I'll show you here in a second. Okay, so to give you an idea, this is 0. This is what we're seeing now. This is a departing group. These are new sunspots right here. These look to be big. I mean, just take it in comparison with what we've seen up here already. Yep. So our sun is suddenly becoming very, very active. Now we're over here at heliosviewer.org, and this is that active region. Trying to see if they've updated anything. And just to show you how intense, let's look at here. Look at that, folks. Look at that. Yeah, this is a pretty active event. And it's just huge amounts of energy. It's just amazing. And here you can see, put Earth. So you could put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Earths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. You can begin to get the idea of why we're saying you need to be aware of this. It's not something that I'm going to take lightly. already making the preparations. So here's what I want to talk about. And I think this is going to be a good topic, and I'd be curious to see your response on this. The 21st of August, we have the event that's taking place in the Earth, the eclipse. A lot of hoopla about that, you know, a lot of different points of view, and the event happened. Well, right prior to the day of the eclipse, it was announced that FEMA, DHS, and branches of the military were conducting exercises with NASA, I believe, called Operation Burnt Sky. I believe that was the operation. If I'm wrong, it may be Dark Sky. But it had to do with the scenario of an event happening in the atmosphere that would impact the grid, the electrical grid. And this 2-day exercise, they never announced where it was at and what the actual operation of the exercise was taking place, but apparently it did. Now, think about this. How did they know? Or was this just coincident that they have an exercise that is, in fact, what potentially could happen? And I just say potentially. Listen, you go back to the last time that we were really hit. Now, the last time I remember is when we were having all sorts of magnetic anomalies. I was videotaping it. I know Steve was out there also. We were getting this from all over the country. And we actually have the graphs, I've saved them, that showed on the 22nd to 23rd on June 2015, the Earth did in fact experience a magnetic pole flip for about 2.5 hours. And that was from an M-class flare. When you think on the scale of magnitude, when you start getting up to the 10x, that is getting to the Carrington effect. I fully expect that whoever is facing the brunt of this, whichever side of the Earth that is, that when it hits the first shock wave, I fully expect to see power outages, fully expect to see computer systems go down, fully expect to see cable go down, completely expect cell phone service to be highly disruptive. These are all side effects of when you have high particles, high density particles hitting us from our sun. This is solar matter that's going to hit us. And our magnetosphere is going to get spanked. And I don't like what, the fact is that an event like this could disrupt the magnetosphere. And if it disrupts the magnetosphere, well, then we're very vulnerable to those cosmic rays, those heavy particles. It's radioactive particles. It's what it is. It's radiation. And if you're flying, for instance, and you're in the midst of one of these solar storms, when these high energy particles are hitting you, I mean, you're getting dosed with radiation to the equivalency of, I read one thing, it's the equivalency of about smoking 1,000 packs of cigarettes. Getting yourself that many x-rays. I mean, it's not good for you. Remember the event that happened in 2004, I believe, or was it 2002? Probably 2002, if I'm right, the Northeast blackout from New York all the way to Toronto. That was caused by a solar flare. And Congress has been warned for decades that our grid was very susceptible to a Carrington event. And yet, it was ignored and is still being ignored. The infrastructure in the United States is archaic. I can tell you here in Denver, it's constantly where you see the water systems collapsing. It's old. The earth is shifting as well. It happens. And we don't think about something we can't see. You don't think about actually a solar flare affecting you personally, do you? No. Why? You can't see it, can't taste it, can't feel it. So why should I be afraid of it? Well, that's the thing about radiation. It will teach you to believe in the unseen realm real quick. So what are we going to do now? Well, I think it's going to be interesting. What we just saw on the video, that was intense, folks. I mean, just intense. That was a long duration X-class flare. And Earth is heading for it. It's coming right at us. We are in, and I'm going to choose my words very carefully, we are in the crosshairs. That's what we got going here. And is it going to impact your city where you live? Well, listen, I always look like this. I was a good Boy Scout, enjoyed it. You know, be prepared was the motto. Good advice, good guidance. It's not fear porn, it's not anything, it's common sense. My God, you know, it truly is. You know, common sense is absolutely the most rarest thing on planet Earth, because powers to be don't have any common sense. I don't even know where their head's at. They're such a, you know, elitist. And no one's going to be talking about it. Now, let's talk about what, if you can see past the smoke and the haze, I have no doubt that the aurora will probably be seen as far as Texas. I think it's just going to be that big of disruption. As well, you need to be, if you know someone that has cardiac issues, pacemakers, those type of things, you don't get freaked out about it. You just need to be aware that this puts additional stress on the body. As I said in my last video, consider this like compression waves, but this has got doses of radiation, electromagnetic, and again, our bodies produce what, 20 watts? So each body can, in fact, be impacted if you have something that interrupts the electromagnetic rhythm. You see, it's that away. I think it's good advice. I read someone say we should definitely, if you have photographs and what have you in the cloud, go and put them onto a outside hard drive, and then put that hard drive into your Faraday cage. The reason why I recommend a Faraday cage over a microwave is this. I don't know how long in duration this shock wave, when it hits us, and what the effects are going to be. And if you use your microwave like most Americans do, you're going to be using it for cooking. You know, I don't want to think about that. There's an event, boom, hits, right? You're using the microwave to cook dinner. And then all of a sudden, all your electronics are fried. Someone said, well, can't you use plastic or rubber? No, no, no. You have to have metal. And then you have to have it insulated, where the electronic device, you know, they're very sensitive to electromagnetic waves. So put those discs. Listen, I want to bring up the point that this person, which was a tremendously good idea about downloading your photos. We are now a society that today we have no photographs. Now, you're going to argue with me. You're going to say, well, Wayne, yes, we do. No, we don't. Now, when I was growing up, we did have photographs. You know, I'm old enough that I still remember the old Polaroids. You know, you'd pull it out and you'd wait, you know, for 2 or 3 minutes and let the thing go, and you'd take it out, and then it would egg, and then you'd have to coat it. Yeah, stuff stink. But we had photographs. We had memories. The generation, the millennials, you don't have memories. You've got electronic images. And if something happens that affects the electronics that are holding those images, you don't have a past. Everyone is always taking the selfies. And I marvel, because you think about this. You say, oh yeah, I got gigs and gigs of pictures, memories that'll last me a lifetime and beyond. No, you've got electronic images. You don't have pictures. Think about that. And in an event, listen, the government, FEMA, you can go online, check out the scenarios, the military. They have been training for decades for an event like this. Now, how they knew back in August, that's a little uncanny. I bet you they had someone reading the cards. That's what I think. And then they looked to the astrologers. And the astrologers began the same thing that the seers were saying in the cards. Every government has them, employs them. And you should be thankful that they do. Because we may not know of the specific plan, the contingency of just in case, but at least we have the nuggets that can say, well, those cats are really figuring out. Maybe if you're rich enough, you got the word 8 months ago, and you started selling your assets, and you began to make this migration out of Silicon Valley, where suddenly now they're popping up in the plains of Montana, Wyoming, Nebraska, Iowa, buying bunkers. And we're not talking just a bunker. We're talking palatial accommodations. I actually read that a couple of these so-called tech titans are spending up to $1 billion. That's a bunker. I know this. There's another group that just hell-bent on wanting to get off Earth. They're spending billions trying to figure out how can we get off of this rock. I don't think it's ever going to be possible. I think we're actually stuck here, which in itself means that this event that's coming in now has more meaning. So let's talk about some other effects. If you have neurological problems, now I contracted spinal meningitis and Lyme disease back in 1992, just about killed me. Was in a coma and still have the neurological effects of it today. And I am very sensitive now. I can tell when the KP index is either above of about a 4 or if it's dropping below to 0. It's the ones that drop below zero that I don't like. I can tolerate the ones that get above the KP index of a 4. The ones that get down to zero, it zaps me. It really does. And I know of others that I've talked to that it does the same thing. So let's talk about if you have psych issues. If you're taking antidepressants, anti-anxiety, those type of things, suffer again from anxiety attacks, claustrophobia. If you have a high degree of sensitivity to electromagnetic waves, by that, I mean, you can get around, for instance, an electrical junction box. And if, let's say, one of the connections of the wires coming in is not shielded, it can affect you. It'll affect you psychically. It'll affect you physically. It'll affect you emotionally. So an event like this, and remember, it's a shock wave, folks. When it hits, it's like anything else. It's going to have an effect. This is energy. And the Earth is now going to be directly in. We've watched this. We've watched this hit Jupiter. We've watched in the past these CMEs, huge solar flares, hitting Saturn. Mars got spanked here about 6 weeks ago. The one that was what we call the Earth-facing effect, which has been absolutely golden. But I made a video 3 weeks ago, and I went back and looked at it. I got some pretty harsh comments by some of you out there saying that I was selling fear porn. But I'll say it again. I was right. You were wrong. I told you that eventually this Earth quiet effect was not going to be in our favor. Well, unfortunately, this is one time I don't want to be right. But nevertheless, it's here. All right, so let's continue. Elderly, you need to be aware if you are a caregiver, if you have parents, grandparents that are elderly, and if they're prone to falling, just be extra aware of that situation. Cardiac, we've talked about that as well. So, and the other thing is, I kind of avoid going outside, although houses do protect us to a degree. But again, these are high charged particles coming at us, and, we'll just see how it goes. So there's the show today. I had a completely different topic all ready to go, but this one here is something we need to be aware of. You need to be aware of it as well. And listen, go about your normal life. Just do it like you were going to prepare for just in case. In this case, here in Colorado, we're going to have a winter storm warning, right? And you make the necessary preparations. You want to make sure you got some staples, particularly if they're forecasting something that's going to have a high amount of wind and snow, right? It's not fear porn. It's just common sense. I'll keep you monitored. I will put the links on there so you can monitor this as yourself. And listen, I'm making the recommendation again. Go over there and sign up with Suspicious Observers. I've met Ben Davidson. I don't agree with everything that Ben says, but he is authentic. Talked with the man. And kudos to him. He used to be a venture capitalist in the industry. And I admire a person who will walk away from a profession and pursue his calling. Now, if we all would do that, this world would be, so much better of a place. It would be. And it just does seem odd, does it not? When we had Heidi Vandenberg on here, we had Levette. I'm going to be asking them to come back. I like to bring Tamu on as well. Folks, all of these wonderful people, and Gary as well. Gary gave us his vision of this. I think he was actually transported into the future. People don't always take that seriously. But now might be a good time, because isn't it weird? We get smacked with Harvey. It forms into the Gulf of Mexico, strongest storm ever, greatest damage ever, right? Now we got Irma. Listen, I had the conversation, I was thinking with the meteorologist, and I'm thinking, well, do you know what Earth spots are? Now, I guess it's a leap to think that if you're being hit with the Earth with high energy, right, coming off of the sun, and if you've got an intense storm, now I know the storm feeds off the warm waters, circulates, but there is electromagnetism in that. And then you've got these high density particles coming in. I'll be curious to see if it has any effect at all, but something just to be aware of. So there you go. Again, I want to know how they knew that. How did they know? Maybe it's just coincidence. That does happen. Of course, if frogs had wings, they wouldn't bump their ass every time they jumped either. But I digress. So, are you going to take precautions? Are you going to be watching to see when the shock wave hits? Are you going to try to see where you are on the globe? Who's going to be facing the sun? Because who's ever facing the sun, the rest of the back behinds, we're going to be, or they're going to be reading, whatever the case may be, about events like this. If this is a long duration, in other words, just like Harvey, instead of coming through and hitting us, initially for the first hour or so, if this is a long vibration, reverberation as it hits, are we going to see issues again with the magnetosphere? I'll be putting this up. We're going to go and start looking at those charts, and we'll start seeing, I have no doubt it's going to be absolutely wild. Just count on it. I can see it coming already. It's already getting there. So we're going to be talking a whole lot. I will squeeze in. I've got two great topics that I want to discuss, and we'll squeeze them in between where we can. In the meantime, be kind to one another. Listen, no matter what happens, humanity, I think in events like this, who knows, maybe this would be a great opportunity to get 60 seconds for humanity really up there. Because I don't know about you, but it certainly seems like the travail of birth pangs seem to be getting a little bit more intense here. Do they or do they not? What next? We read in that document yesterday, and I go back and I continue to see that, and those words are etched in my consciousness now, where he talked about the fact that the royals and the implementers, they know that there is an event coming. Space weather, that's what it said specifically. Coincidence? I may not be the absolute sharpest tack in the box, but I get the point pretty quickly here that whole lot of coincidences seem to be happening. you have to agree also, I forgot to mention about the fires. The Western United States is on fire. I read, in fact, I didn't hear it, I actually heard it on the news that in the West, right now, I believe it's 5 million acres are on fire. And where the beetle kill is at, for those of you who don't know what the beetle kill is, about 10 years ago, pine beetle came through, just decimated the pine trees up in the mountains, wiped them out. And there are places that you can get up in the backcountry that there was a trail that we were on a couple of years ago. Great, beautiful trail, great vistas, and all of a sudden we hit a patch of the beetle kill. And I mean, the trees were just enormous. You know, we're talking some 8, 9 feet in diameter, and they were just strewn everywhere and blocked the path. We couldn't go in there. Well, that's been sitting there for a decade, and it's just prime fuel for many of these fires that have been started by lightning strikes, which happens a lot out here in the West. We get dry thunderstorms. So we've got fires. We've got a thing that came out today that even seismologists are kind of looking at what's going up in Idaho. It just ain't normal, as they say. So that's going on. Then, of course, got hurricanes, Harvey, the disaster down in Texas, Louisiana, Tennessee is just enormous. I think that there are going to be actual communities down in Texas that will be uninhabitable. The residents there will just have to be transplanted somewhere else. And the prognosticators on Irma right now, I wouldn't take a bet on that one. Not that you would do anyway. It's just a metaphor as to where it's going. It seems like Florida is going to get impacted one way or the other. Let us all send out conscious thoughts in our meditation time and prayer time that, hey, that this thing de-escalates, loses its punch. Because I can't imagine being in a path of 150-mile-an-hour winds. Wouldn't want to. Wouldn't want any person or living entity to be in that path. And then we got the solar thing going on. Oh, got the crazy guy over there in North Korea. Yeah, I don't, you sometimes just go, is that insanity or is it just something else? I couldn't imagine genius, but then again, I guess it's the perspective, isn't it? Maybe he has right to have the sovereignty for his nation and feels that if he can get in with the big boys at the table, I don't know. He's got a penchant for killing those very close to him and those relatives. All right. I think I've won this one long enough. Appreciate that the fact you come in and listen. I'll make sure to leave the links, and I'll leave you with this thought here behind me. You see it? God is a concept of the infinite being. So let's take care of ourselves. If we were created in the image of the infinite being, that means we also have, I believe, the same abilities and powers to move mountains. I believe is how I read one scripture say, if you had faith, if you believed in your heart that those things for which you say will come to pass, you shall have them. That's what it says. So let's apply that key of wisdom to our situation. Because if not, I don't want any more of these flares going off. It bothers me that we haven't got the earth quieting effect didn't work for us this time. So has something changed? Maybe. All right. Be kind to one another. We will talk soon.